Hello everyone and welcome to Global Distribution, our fourth session in our topic area, International Overview, of our course on International Entrepreneurship. For this particular session we have one learning outcome to achieve. So, by the end of the session you will have an awareness of the global distribution of enterprise activity. So at this point, I want to introduce you to one of the main key resources for the course, GEM, or Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. Super important for the course, and for your assignments, you'll find it incredibly useful. So the latest report is from 2014, and you can find a copy of the report in Topic 1 on Learn in the Essential Reading file. It's very important to remember that the definitions of enterprise do differ between different contexts, very different levels and types of enterprise activity. GEM, though, defines entrepreneurship as any attempt at new business or new venture creation, such as self-employment, new business organisation, the expansion of an existing business by an individual, teams of individuals or established businesses. In terms of how they gather the data, GEM generates a random sample of adults in every year, and they seek to find out what proportion are involved in nascent ventures. What we mean by nascent ventures are basically startups, new firms that have been up and running for less than 42 months. We'll look at some of the key contexts and concepts of GEM in subsequent sessions, but for now, let's pick out some of the main features. The GEM framework for exploring entrepreneurship is as follows. They talk about something called the Total Early Stage Entrepreneurial Activity, or TEA. Here's a hint, you might want to remember this for your test. It's the Total Early Stage Entrepreneurship Activity, or TEA. And basically this is an umbrella concept that involves looking at nascent entrepreneurs and also owner-managers of a new business. So, collectively, they explore businesses from 0 up until 3.5 years old. GEM also has a key terms of factor, efficiency and innovation-driven economies. What this means is that they separate different nations according to how they compete. Factor-driven economies are those which depend on doing things on the basis of their natural resources or their human resources. Efficiency-driven economies focus on doing things better or efficiently than their competitors. Innovation-driven economies are economies that are driven by new things, so developing new products or new services. And you can see here that if we compare factor-driven economies to efficiency-driven economies to innovation-driven economies, that the percentage of adult populations involved in entrepreneurial activity, or the TEA, differ quite a lot. If you're a factor-driven economy, they have more of a higher percentage of their adult population involved in entrepreneurship. So, if you live in Cameroon, for example, and you're an adult aged between 18 and 64, you're much more likely to be involved in an enterprise than, for example, if you're French, or, for example, if you're Costa Rican. So again, from the GEM data, we can see a couple of interesting things on this slide. When we compare the TEA, remember this is a total early stage entrepreneurial activity, to established business owners, we can see quite a difference, but that difference depends on what area of the world we're looking at. So in Africa, for example, we can see there are almost twice as many startups as established business owners. What does this mean? Well, in literal terms, it means that about half of those startups will eventually fail. Why? Why should there be more failures, for example, in Africa than in, for example, the European Union? If we look at the EU, there are still more startups than there are established business owners, again, meaning that some startups will fail. Why should there be more in Africa than the European Union? It's questions like this that GEM is most interested in looking at. GEM also distinguishes between something called opportunity entrepreneurship and necessity entrepreneurship. Very simply, opportunity entrepreneurship is entrepreneurship where entrepreneurs can see an opportunity in the market and they basically start an enterprise to exploit or capitalise on that opportunity. There's no essential need for them to become an entrepreneur, as opposed to necessity-driven entrepreneurship, where people become entrepreneurs most frequently because they have no other choice. They must generate an income for themselves or for their families, and being an entrepreneur or self-employed is the only way that they can do this. What's interesting here is we can see that there are far more opportunity-based entrepreneurs than necessity-based entrepreneurs. This tends to be the same pretty much over all different types of economies, though there are differences, as you can see. So let's take a look at some summary points from GEM. Now, some of these we'll look in a lot more depth as the course progresses. But for now, we can first of all say that the proportion of the adult population engaged in enterprise activity differs widely between countries. The highest is in developing economies. We can also look at something called churn. Now, churn is the amount of startups or frequency of startups and the amount or frequency of business failures taken together. It varies broadly in lines with levels of TEA. Motives for enterprise can be divided into opportunity or necessity-based entrepreneurship. We need to understand that different countries, different nations, have different pressures that dominate different contexts and situations. There is also a U-shaped relationship between income levels and enterprise activity. And one more significant factor, one which we're going to look at in the next session, is that the situation of males and females differs hugely, with low ratios of female to male entrepreneurs. So simply put, if you're a male, you're more likely in most countries, but not necessarily all, to be an entrepreneur than your female counterpart. What I'd like you to do now is to pause for a couple of minutes to complete the following task. It's quite important that you do this. Hint, hint, it could come up in your test after this topic. So, make sure you know what these key terms mean before you move on. If necessary, write them down. So once you've completed your task and you're ready, click on our final part for this topic.